This is The Red Lens.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cris von Erik, and this is The Red Lens. Now, we have a special guest coming in tonight, Franklin. The special guest is actually from, I think he's going to have everybody beat from the uniqueness of the location and from the actual distance, because the gentleman we have coming in tonight is actually a serviceman who is stationed over in Afghanistan. We're going to have a good time here. Hello, Paul. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Sweet. Well, I got myself all dolled up, and apparently my iOS is not updated enough for me to use StreamYard on video.
Well, there you go.
So you're gonna get me all Black Opsy today here.
Yeah, that's well. It actually that goes with the narrative here. This is good. We can sell
right. We can really sell this, really push it. Even though I have my own YouTube channel.
The sergeant is in such deep cover that no video is possible.
Right. Yeah, there we go. That's the story. I'll tell everybody that. That sounds pretty good.
So, okay, and again, I want to introduce you again specifically and properly here. This is Sergeant Paul Janelis.
Janulus is actually the pronunciation, Of course. We're from the United States, so we can say Janulus, and that's fine.
I know.
Pronounce the J, right?
That's the New York butchering you get when you come on with us.
That's good. No worries.
But
I do have to change. The reason why on social media I'm Paul Benjamin is just for OPSEC, so I do have to change that around a little bit for Facebook and stuff like that. But I toe the line quite a bit because I use my real name on my channel, and of course I talk about some controversial topics which can get you in trouble, if they track you down in the military for some of that. But
I want to say first, before we go any further, myself, Franklin here, and I'm sure everybody out there watching, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for what you're doing over there. You guys are putting yourselves, in the line of fire every day in a scenario and an area that we can't even comprehend over here. So I thank you, and we thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. We appreciate the support. Thank you very much for that.
I know you can't get uber technical, but what are you involved in over there? Is it just basic patrolling? Keeping people safe in the area, or just scouting?
Yeah. So really won't get into details and stuff of the deployment too much, as you said, but just consider it advisory work and infantry work. Call it infantry work, what you'd think of as infantry work. Okay. We're in a phase in Afghanistan where we're trying to stand up the Afghans and their government so they can stand on their own, So we've been trying to, get them to take care of their own problems and basically get out there hands-on and train them how to do that, advise them how to do that, and so forth. So there's that, and then an element of keeping areas safe and secure and stuff like that too. So we can call it that as well.
What is a typical day over there for you guys? Do you obviously I imagine your day starts way early.
Actually, not necessarily. It depends on what's going on. So right now it's almost 7:00 in the morning. This is an early wake up for me because I was doing planning and con ops and operation order stuff last night till 1:32 a.m. Okay, so it depends on when. Right, we're all over the place. It depends on if we're going to operate at night, if we're going to operate in the day. A lot of advisory work where I'm talking and meeting with police and military and other members of the government, to kind of help them along with their problems. A lot of that does happen during the day for us. So but I'm on Afghan time here, meaning they're not real busy and motivated early in the morning. You know, they're not they're not killing it and starting their their e-business or going
Yeah.
out and making sales. They get moving around 10 o'clock, and then they take a long tea and coffee break and lunch. It's that kind of stuff. But
Gotcha.
I mean, we work around that and kind of try to help these guys along. I mean, it's really. I'll say this. I can tell you this. The problems in this country, the problem here
Mm.
the problems here are way beyond what most people in the United States realize.
Mm.
I mean, their normal every day, it's in a lot of these regions, is just fighting. I mean, they talk about imagine, you have baseball season, right? And
Mm.
like, oh, opening day starts. That's fighting season for them. Like, oh, this is fighting season where apparently shit blows up and people kill each other. So it's it's completely effed here in a lot of ways, and they got a lot of work to do. They've come far, but man, there's a lot, and it's the I won't get too much into politics, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of thoughts. One thought is just leave them to their own devices. It's their problem,
Mm.
and that makes sense. But the problem with that is that, like we leave right now, Taliban's just going to take over large portions of the country and
Yeah.
then continue. It's not just the people here. It's I mean, the people here are important enough, but it's people out in the West. So,
Mm.
they consolidate, reorganize, gain wealth, gain support, gain territory, and what's their next steps? You know what I
Right.
mean? So now they start attacking parts of the West. Now they start, openly, sending suicide bombers and doing different stuff, to do attacks in Europe and other parts of the Mideast and United States. And so that's the reason, like the larger reason for our involvement and why we just drag this out, is because it's kind of that mindset when Iraq first broke off, which was, fight them over there so we don't fight them here.
Mhm.
And people in the United States are like, oh, whatever, like that's not a real thing. Yeah, actually it is. It is. If these people consolidate, they're going to do stuff to the United States, to westernized countries. If we don't allow for that to happen and keep them broken up, or at least, employ the governments here to keep them, under control, then it's less problems we face as far as domestic terrorism and stuff like that.
I think the very rich, rulers in these areas, they don't mind these little terrorist pockets as long as they are not, up by their mansions. If they cause civil unrest here or there, they're okay with that. And
Right.
maybe in some cases, I think they sometimes use them to do things on the covert, but that's my opinion as a citizen.
Well, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Mm.
That's pretty accurate. I mean, a lot of what I was doing in advisory work is figuring out who's not good inside the government too, inside the Afghan government, and then getting them ousted from
Mm.
their positions. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely a real thing. The counter corruption is huge. We have entire, you could say, departments dedicated to counter corruption and trying to prevent that. And like people, it's funny. Like people will think, well, U.S. government's corrupt too. Yeah, not like this.
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like this. There's been more than one occasion where I have a shura, which is a meeting with somebody, right?
Mm.
And that person gets killed on their way to the meeting, or we get there's a fight that happens before at the meeting or right outside. It is a lot of that, and so it gets normalized when you're in my shoes.
Right.
You're just like, well, this is just another day over here, but you think about it, like how crazy that would be at home, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like if just, like, well, we got to go vote on this impeachment trial. Oh, but, several senators,
Yeah,
got
their
in
car blew up.
gunfights on the way over. Yeah, we had a couple of cars blow up on the way. Like, it's like, whoa, what the hell's going on? And even getting into things like, the victimhood and feminism and stuff like that. I mean, real tyranny against women happens
Right.
here. You
Mm.
know what I mean? It's in Western countries, women have all the rights and then more, oftentimes more if you're talking about divorce court, things like that, than the
That's a
males
different
do.
story
Like they
altogether.
have, of course, right? Like they have no clue. Like they have no idea. They just don't even have a
Yeah.
concept of what it would be like to be over here.
Well, over there, it's like,
Um,
you want a divorce? I cut your head off.
there's
That's
no
what
such
you
thing
want.
as only the male can divorce the female.
No, I know
That's
that. In all seriousness, I do know that. Yeah. Yeah, you
yep.
can't do it the other way around.
Yeah, like here's a little interesting story. I'll try not to take the whole show up with it, but it involves it involves the United States actually. But this will give you an idea of how different things are in these areas. So I'm just saying, I'm gonna take a sip of water here. So my son back home, Michigan,
Wow.
was friends with this other kid who was a Muslim kid born, I want to say born in the United States, but his parents were here on visa from Jordan. Okay. Now, Jordan is under Sharia law, but they're an ally of ours. They're considered non-extremist. Okay. So my kid would go play with this other kid, and that would be cool. And got to know the family a little bit, right? But not just enough to feel safe with my kid around his kid. And the kid was a nice kid. They were great. One Saturday, the wife is calling his mom and, pretty distraught, trying to figure things out. Basically, the husband had visas and passports made through his Islamic channels at the mosque and kidnapped the kids and left the United States and went to Jordan because he was beating the crap out of the wife under his belief system, Sharia law, like just beating the shit out of her. And she being now getting into westernized cultures, like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to divorce this guy. Dropped the bomb on him that she was going to divorce him. And he grabbed the kids, went to Jordan, and cleaned the accounts out too. And he kept her in a state where she couldn't work and couldn't provide for herself. And so she was in this position now, and now he's in Jordan with the kids, and he's not coming back. And Jordan's under Sharia law, where if she goes there, he can't be forced to bring the kids back to the United States, even though technically that's kidnapping. And she goes there, she is effectively a prisoner under her husband. If he accuses her of adultery, he can honor kill her. That's legal. In Jordan, which is an ally of ours, remember. And if she ever wants to see her kids again, she has to take all that risk and go back there where she'll be kept effectively a prisoner by the husband and can continue to get the crap kicked out of her and all that stuff. That to me, that's real, misogyny, right? Like that's
Right.
real. Like the people that are marching around in Washingtons with goofy hats, I don't think they quite
They don't get
understand.
it.
They don't get it. They have no idea the privileges. The most privileged person in the United States right now is a white woman. With the female nature, and I'm always wanting to trade upward. It's their way of doing that. And I get good with women, and I teach men how to get good with communicating with women in terms of game and all that stuff. So you can have positive relationships with women in your life if you want it, and so that they have genuine arousal for you. I don't need a chick to be my prisoner. You know what I'm saying? And there's kind of like, if you don't obey the rules, you're a prisoner,
Right.
One thing they do to not award divorce, I think, is a good thing. I think in our country, women are rewarded for divorce. They become more economically viable and better off oftentimes when they initiate divorce. And
What does
so
what does Rich say? Cash and prizes?
That's it.
yes,
Cash and
they win all
prizes.
the cash and prizes, if you're gonna win cash and prizes for divorcing somebody, well, then there's not much incentive. Whereas at least in this culture here, they're not incentivized. But I wouldn't want to keep a woman a prisoner either and have a guy beat the crap out of her. You know what I mean? Anytime he wants to. So there's definitely extremes on things. And this attempt, it's funny, the attempt to control hypergamy, it doesn't work. They still cheat. They still mate switch. They still run off and, you know what I mean, go into hiding and, have premarital sex. I mean, they still do all that stuff, if there's a higher set of ideals they can get behind by a stronger men that they admire, then they're less likely to do those things. Just like when we were a bit more of a Christian culture and, and sleeping around and being a slut was frowned upon rather than supported. Okay. Women didn't do those things quite so much, you know what I mean? And they thought about those things and they were better off, so in some ways, having the incentive to not do those things, of course, puts them in a position that's better off. But there's a situation too where you take things too far and then they just don't give a crap anymore. You know what I mean? And they just but to think that hypergamy isn't a primal drive, would be sorely mistaken. I mean, when you look at, you would think that by penalty of death or abuse, if it was that, you wouldn't do it. And it happens all the time. It just, I'm sure maybe less rate wise in the West, but I don't know if it's that much less, to be honest with you.
Now, you actually touched on something that I was actually going to get into. I saw from your Facebook page you are a man of many careers and interests, and you said you're from Michigan, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I got a place in just north of Detroit area, kind of near where I grew up, and got a place up north. And yeah, I have a lot of different, more Renaissance kind of person, I guess.
I saw something. You had now. Do you have a YouTube channel or any?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm glad you mentioned. It's called The 5% Understanding Sexual Dynamics. It's a good thing to talk about, actually. A little bit of a origin story, more or less. So I became more or less red pilled. You know what I mean? Before red pill was a thing. So I got involved in this stuff because I was interested in psychology. I had my military career and I was going to pursue a doctorate in psychology. I was interested in relationship dynamics. I was married before and it wasn't going well. You know what I mean? So I was trying to figure all that stuff out. I was using all the mainstream sources that fail. You know what I mean? All the very blue pilled, as we would call them, sources. Sorry, I'm a little distracted because I'm about to send you a link to I just sent it through StreamYard. I don't know if that's a good one, but that should be, that's a link and it'll take you to my, okay, cool. So that'll take you to the channel. And so I was going to pursue this, degree in psychology, which I still may get. I may switch gears and do a licensed professional counselor or something. I'm really only interested in relationship dynamics, and men's lifestyle kind of stuff, right? And peak performance. Like, I'm not interested in I'm not interested in, working in a prison and diagnosing prisoners, although that's interesting. It's just not an interest of mine. Or working in a rehab center, helping out addicts, like all the things that people who go for this degree end up doing for a living. I'm not really interested in that. And the problem is feminism has infiltrated academia so much that it just, by the time I was sent on another deployment, I just never picked the degree back up. But I continued to study stuff. It's interesting. There's a book, at the time being married, and I was kind of more of a blue pill alpha at the time, I guess you'd call it. I was trying to figure out, why does my marriage suck? And it was around 2010. I was like, I'm not having the sex I want. That's a big part of the problem right now. And so, of course, being a complete nug Chad, right? I just looked up have more sex on the internet, and then a book came up, and it was called Why Women Have Sex. And I was like, that looks good, So I get this book called
So they have leverage in court.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
That's exactly why. So they have leverage in court.
right. So I'm like, what motivates chicks to actually bang? Like, what is going on here? And and so in what can my simple, sometimes very simple mindset, that's basically what I looked at. And it was interesting reading it. It's not completely like red pill book, but it is an evolutionary psychology book. And it was put out by an evolutionary psychologist. Let's see, the guy's name was guy's name was David Buss. So if you look up David Buss, you can find like studies they've done. Like they figured out like the alpha beta dynamic early 2000s. You know what I mean? Evo Psych. So like I started getting really interested in that stuff, and then pickup, because at the time I just, and it ended up not working out with the person I was married with, and I went single, and then I was just slaying. Like I was just to the point where it was just stupid. Like it was like, I'm not accomplishing anything in life. I'm just going out and slaying bitches, right? And I don't recommend that. That's not what I'm training guys to do. I'm not a pickup guy. I teach game and pickup so guys can chase excellence and have women in their lives and be able to get dates as they go through their lives chasing excellence, not so that they could dance around at a bar 4 days a week and bang a 6 in a van. You know what I mean? Like there's pickup artistry I'm really not interested in. That's a losing proposition for guys, although you can gain skills with communicating with women. You're really LARPing alpha behavior. I would rather help a guy tap into his inner alpha. You know what I'm saying? And actually, because we all have that capacity to be an alpha. We're a product of the top 40% of males that, in our history made it. 60% didn't. So, as we've gone through, although a lot of guys are very out of touch with their alpha side, everyone has some capacity to express those traits that can be attractive. And that's one of the things I help guys out with. But I got interested in this stuff a long time ago. I stayed in the background because I have a martial arts background too. Now, martial arts is really nerdy. Like you think this stuff can get nerdy, go ahead and do martial arts. Like that's can be super nerdy. And I was in the industry for a while instructing. I taught over at Fort Bragg, and trained out of the JSOC facility there. So we could say I'm well credentialed in that, but none of the credentials don't prevent you from getting your ass kicked, right? So I don't care much about that stuff, but so many people hang their hats on that. And when a number of things happened, like in the martial arts world, you had all these people whose livelihoods, money, and status depended on these martial arts, would tear each other apart on the internet and act like just total children, right? And I watched this dynamic play out. I was a part of it for a minute. And so then, later on, getting into noticing these, I noticed 21 convention stuff that was, early on the internet. Then I found Richard Cooper's channel first. I found Rollo Tomasi's stuff, which in my opinion, he's probably the best red pill writer thinker. I mean, he's the godfather, so he's got his stuff. His first book really put together and made connections from all this Evo Psych stuff I had been reading before. So it kind of, put me down that path. In 2016, though, this was the first time I read his stuff. But, so I just kind of got onto this material, but I was hanging out in the background and wanting to perfect my ability to coach, ability to deliver material, and understanding of this stuff too. Just continue study it. I didn't want to just jump on a red pill movement and then regurgitate a bunch of shit that I half understand, and maybe half of it's wrong, right? Because it's just it's there's no, we're not necessarily scientists, although we're just sharing information. So and then of course I was field testing a lot of material on women, right? and so I really wanted to make sure I had my craft in order before I went public with anything. I've been doing YouTube things for a couple of years, but never advertised it. Have not until recently been trying to get subscribers because I wanted to practice. And I'll rewind one more tidbit about that, is that so what also got me enlightened about this stuff wasn't just my own situation though, was other soldiers. So as a non-commissioned officer, I'm dealing with soldier care issues, soldier readiness, and I'm actually a staff sergeant, probably be a sergeant first class here soon. That's my actual rank. And I deal with soldier problems all the time, and it revolves around women constantly and bad decisions these guys are making and the shit that chicks do to men to rake them over. And so that was hugely enlightening as well, is just to see how the true nature was. You know what I mean? And it's not all roses and fantasy and blue pill princess stuff, right? We know that here having this conversation. Some of your new listeners, a lot of new listeners might not realize that. This might be a surprise to them. That was another thing too in Bus's book. It wasn't so much his conclusions that got me. It was the interviews of chicks and the things that they would say. Like when they were like, yeah, so I screwed this, I screwed my best friend's boyfriend because I was mad at her, Like, and you're just like, what the fuck? And so as a blue pill, sorry to F-bomb on you, as a blue pill guy, we're like, you have this separation, like, well, bad girls, they do that, right? But the good girls that we're going to marry and run off in the sunset, they don't do those things.
Nope.
And then you're realizing, wait a second, they all do that, or they all have a drive to do that if they're not actually doing that. There's another motivation that's preventing them from doing some of these really savage things, but their mating drive is just as savage as a guy's and sometimes worse. And so you realize that going through soldier suicide, going through soldier suicide after soldier suicide because some chick didn't love them. I tell you, you only need to do that shit so many times before you become as red pilled as you could be before it's even considered a thing. And so that's kind of my little bit of my origin story. But yeah, I latched on to Rich's group because that's kind of funny too. I was thinking of doing more on things on entrepreneurship because I'm an entrepreneur guy, but I'm not a billionaire, so that doesn't make much sense. But I was just kind of figuring out how I could help guys out, right? And I thought maybe, because in my mind, I'm like, nobody wants to hear about dating and screwing women. Maybe I should go like just self-improvement, right? Which is stupid. Okay. No, we're going to talk about dating and screwing women.
I would have to beg to differ on that.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and of course, chasing excellence is more important. That's going to get you better quality women and the sex that you want. But you have to learn how to communicate and game your woman. I don't care if you're married for 20 years. It's what you have to do. But I was thinking, like, I like cars. I'm into cars. I was like, yeah, maybe some with entrepreneurs and cars. And then I come across this guy's channel. And I'm like, who's this guy that took my name?
He took my idea.
He took my idea. Like, it's all my shit, right? Like super alpha, everything belongs to me now, right? Which is bullshit, of course. And so then I jump on this guy's channel. And I'm like, hey, you know what? He's pretty cool. He's making a lot of sense. And I'm just kind of started following him. I was like, this guy, I like this guy. He makes a lot of sense. He's got good stuff. And then I kind of watched him. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think you're right. Because, but I think he gets a bad rap by people because everybody looks at him and he's made a lot of success, and they throw like a lot of daggers at him because of that. And they don't realize that it's taken him a long time to get to that point. And you want to talk about divorce? I'm sure you've seen some of the videos he's made about his own personal experiences. So.
Yep. He has gone through trials and tribulations like everyone else. He just figured out how to make money better than everyone else faster. That's it. And so he's got answers there. Rich is a great dude, and he's got a lot of knowledge. And so that's an interesting point you make, though. And it's something I need to be aware of because I come across like, actually, Rollo was talking about my video on his Q&A, his last Q&A, right? And Conk jumps on like, you know, Paul's what did he say? He said, every Chad meme is about Paul. I was laughing. So, like,
Your friend Conk has actually been watching this. He's in the chat, and he asks us to say, can you explain what a Jody is? I don't know if that's an inside joke. What is that?
Yeah. No, that's funny. We had that discussion over in the group. Yeah. So and God, one of our meetups, I think we had a discussion. Jody is an old term. It's
Sounds
the
like
dude who bang. Yeah. Well, it's not. It's a dude who bangs your chick when you're on deployments or training. His name's Jody.
Oh.
And so it's to give you an idea of how common this thing is and how prevalent it's been for a long time. And this is the TradCons need to hear this because there's this like fantasy that if we just press rewind and become religious, all the problems are going to be solved. So Jody was invented during World War II, you know, and so some of the African American soldiers had this like song and about Jody who's banging a girl, and it got picked up by the rest of the soldiers, and then Jody became slang. So there's cadences about Jody banging a girl that we used to sing at airborne school.
Nice.
That was, you know, when we do our like cadence runs or whatever, you know, and that's like that we were as old as 1940s, and you know, and so yeah, so that's what Jody is. That's so people who think that, you know, somehow maybe women were different or better, you know, I don't know about that. It doesn't seem to bear out with the evidence. I think that we got Jodies and, you know, basic hoes. I don't know what you want to call them.
Well, yeah, okay.
That's about right.
This is Franklin. This is what I was interested in getting involved in here. This part of the program. What is there any like craziness going on where like guys are running over to the women's barracks?
I'm glad you asked this.
You're going into a reservist anyway.
Right?
Who cares? You're out of there. You're gonna go to the beach and hang out.
Yeah. Well, and I don't care because when I'm in the right, that's my. When I'm in the right, I know I'm in the right. I don't give a shit, and it's got me really far in life, you know. And so, anyhow, yeah, I'm not. Trying to integrate females into what used to be all male units. So, like your infantry and cav units. Guess how much of a disaster that's been? Like all of the disaster. So you're dropping these chicks in, young girls who are in their alpha seed phase of their lives, right? Early 20s. Early 20s, you know, and what are they looking for? They're looking for a dude like me, right? Like, just gonna like smash and grab. That's it, and leave. Like, that is what they're looking for. And although I'm older, smarter, wiser, I don't do things that would get me in trouble. But these younger guys don't understand. And so I'll just tell you a few anecdotes. So one particular chick, okay, she's a private. I don't even think she's 21 yet. She gets in trouble with her squad leader. Her squad leader had, you know, smoked her, made her do some push-ups, stuff like that, which is typical normal Army stuff. She didn't like him, okay? So she was on her hit list. And then he started banging the platoon sergeant, who was a married guy with several kids, of course, right? Probably not the same mom, because that's, you know, guys in the military are really good at screwing their lives up. And so she's banging this platoon sergeant. Then she's banging some other like E4 soldier in the same platoon. And then she turns around and sharps all three of them. Sharp is the sexual harassment program that the military runs.
Oh,
and so
it's like a military Me Too.
That's what it sounds like.
That is exactly what it is. And when you get sharped in the military, unless they do something like physical violence or destruction of property, false claims, it's not designed to fight against a false claim. So if someone does a false rape charge to you as a civilian and you have ample evidence that it's clearly a false charge and that she's weaponized, they're weaponizing the rape laws against somebody, she can get charged, right? As a civilian, she can get criminally charged. In the military, it doesn't work that way, because they don't want to discourage. The argument is that they don't want to discourage people from reporting.
Right.
Of course, though, it does then discourage people from reporting, because anyone who is actually assaulted, which is a much smaller percentage, okay, what might not be inclined to report when you have all of these dumb girls doing false reports for consensual sex. And so she does this report. It comes out that it was all consensual because they pull all the text messages, they pull all the information. She roped her squad leader that she didn't like into it, saying he was sending nudes and coming on to her and all this. There was no evidence of that. And the evidence showed the contrary, that she weaponized against him. He didn't get in any trouble, but she didn't either.
Well, I would have been like, look, it's like 110 degrees here. Of course, I'm going to be walking around in my boxers.
Right, of course. But, that's another thing. But so the platoon sergeant gets sent home, isn't allowed to continue deployment with the group, not because he did sexual harassment or raped her, but because it's called fraternizing, where higher rank sleeping with the lower rank in the same chain of command. So he gets nailed for that, for consensual sex, fraternization. And then the E4 type, they just moved him to a different place. She has no penalty. This is literally like setting a hooker out and a John that's really a cop. Yeah. And a John goes to pay him, and then they're like, you're busted, right? It's almost, they're just taking these females and just dropping them in these combat arms units, and dudes are like, I'll stick my penis in it. and and then they're just getting
I've been staring at a dirt pile for the last 10 months.
Right. And these guys don't have the abundance with women either. Like, so me, I mean, this isn't like a brag. I don't, guys who know me know I'm not someone who brags about stuff, but I will speak factually. I could stop all sex today, and I've had probably way more experiences than the average male will ever have in their entire lives. You know what I mean? Like, I've gone through a lot of experiences. Okay. I've had quite the rotation and still do. All right. So I can go to deployment and say, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to chase excellence, work on my stuff. Not going to get the juice is not worth the squeeze to get in trouble with one of these chicks, right? Especially because they're not that attractive and you're going to be one of several guys usually, I'm not going to say I've never banged a girl on a deployment. That would be a lie. But I'm always very careful about who that is with and how that goes down, And so, but think about it. You're dropping these young girls in who sexual market value.
What's that?
Out of 10. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And they're around all these dudes who by a higher percentage have alpha traits. They're in decent shape, and they don't have any women around.
No.
And so they have their pick of alpha seed essentially, and boy do they pick. There's been reports of pregnancies and not knowing the father. Oh yeah, like we're talking 5 to 7 partners rumored.
It's got to be Bravo Company. Those guys are animals.
Those guys, yeah, Bravo
Bring them all in here.
And I'm going to say, just to protect my anybody who would make any connections, though, is that I'm speaking generally, right?
Yeah,
like I'm not isolating a unit here, okay? And I'm not going to advertise what unit I'm with while I'm talking to you. I'm actually been because as an advisor and what I do, I'm very much segmented from the drama that happens in the regular RE, okay? But I'm on the same fob, so I see what's going on, and of course I'm more of a social scientist, so I kind of pay attention to it. Even the contractors that are here, are one of my contractor friends at one of the fobs I was at. There's a pretty decent looking actual sexual market value was actually more like a 7, which is like, wow, that's like a 15 here.
I know that's a
And
goal.
right. But she had no.
You see what got dropped in here this afternoon?
Right. She was just like Eastern European or whatever. And he had hooked up with her and stuff, but then he had stopped. He was like, no, because she has no less than, 2 or 3 partners in any given time. And it ends up being a recipe because you know how women like drama, like they just can't get away from it. So it ends up becoming a recipe for that, and guys lose their jobs. You know what I mean? And so here, my contractor buddy's making a couple $100,000 a year with a security clearance. Do you think he wants to lose his job over some dumb Eastern European chick because one of the guys she's banging gets jealous or whatever? And you know what I'm saying? And so it's a huge mess. I mean, people don't stop trying to screw each other just because you put rules in play.
You see, like Franklin, I'm amazed here because I'm over there thinking these guys are like walking around on eggshells and, sirens and everything. It's like, hedonism. It's like, yeah.
Well, it sounds like that. It's hedonism for a few. So you're talking like there's probably 1 female to 100 guys. Literally. Yeah.
Now I see why they can't find the father.
Right. So they do the selecting pretty much. I mean, women generally select in any case, but they really do the selecting here. And they're so drunk with attention, they wouldn't know a good dude. And if it hit them in the face, including alpha dudes, like they have no idea what they're doing. They're just completely just on attention is literally currency, right, for a female, and they are billionaires here.
Really, there's a lot of things hitting them in the face over there.
Yep. Yeah. It's like they walk around and it's like it's like taking someone from like the trailer park who hasn't been able to manage their finances their entire life and giving them that winning lottery ticket. That is what is happening to these women. And they're just screwing themselves up. There's been herpes going around. There's so here's fun. We're ready for this. This came from a doctor, so I know it's a true story. And it's one of the fobs out in one of the places around here.
What is
they
a
were
fob?
having a fob is a forward operating base. Okay. So when I say fob, I mean base. Okay, and there's different bases. And so they were having conics orgies. So apparently all lights off in a conics, and dudes were invited to go to the orgy, and then they would find the warm body to stick their penis in, not knowing who the person, pretty much, right? Not knowing who the person is. And what that really is, by the way, so if there's a 1 to 100 ratio, what that is a train. Where that's not an orgy, that's a train. That's like maybe 7 or 8 dudes.
You don't know like if it's the woman or not, right?
Well, I imagine when they're up close, they know it's not a dude.
Let's hope so.
I would hope. But I mean, it's it's a bunch of dudes standing in line to bang probably like 2 chicks, so you might have 2 girls and like a train of 7 or 8 dudes. And then of course HIV happens. And so these guys are getting hit. So somebody had HIV. Yep. And so then you got the venereal diseases that go around too. We've had herpes go around here. I've heard that. Herpes is pretty common though. It's like 30% of people have it, I guess. Because it's not like they're selling. Not that these people would necessarily buy condoms or use protection if they had it. But yeah, that's another thing, right? Because we're not talking good decision-making skills.
Doesn't sound like it.
No. Well, and what we're talking again, average soldier, which is, average soldier is, you got some soldiers that are, the top of excellence in the entire world, but that's not every soldier. You know what I mean? These are younger in their, late teens, sometimes right after high school to early 20s. And their decision-making sucks. They're not always high IQ. They're not always smart. They're not always good and the Army takes care of everything for them. So they get a paycheck and then the Army helps them organize their entire life.
Wow.
So they're almost dependents on the army, right? So they're not out having to like figure themselves out. And I'm not talking about guys like in the special operations community and these other guys, but I'm talking about just the general populace, right? And especially in what we call Pogue world, which is people other than grunts, so your non-combat people, they're working around females all the time, and you know, it's a thing I say all the time. I've said this a lot, which is women just don't take a dick break for the most part, like their whole lives. Like that's what guys have a real hard time. But when I explain it, they're like, "Huh." It's almost like it's like trying to. They have a hard time grasping it because as males, especially blue-pilled males, right?
Mm-hmm.
We go through periods where we just don't have vagina. Like we broke up with somebody or trying to figure our shit out or we just got laid off. And so we'll go like 4 to 6 months sometimes, right? That's normal. You take a break.
Yeah.
Most women, probably 80% of them, if their sexual market value is 5 and higher, don't take a break.
Yeah.
Like their normal life is like, had their first lay when they were 15 or whatever. And so that guy becomes a boyfriend and then they break up like 3 months. And then she goes like a month without it. But then she sleeps with Chad at the party. You know what I mean? And then she meets a dude with a car. It's just like, this is like their whole lives. It's just like it's like if you made a graph, it'd be just a line going upward as they collect sexual partners, just whoop, whoop, until they guess they marry, and even then sometimes the collection of more additional partners doesn't end. So on deployments, guys are usually like, okay, I'm resolved, I got a chick at home or whatever, I'm not gonna bang for a year. I guess that's the way this one goes. Girls, no, not a chance. Girls it just doesn't stop. They'll say to themselves, oh yeah, bro, I got my fiance at home, and then Chad Thundercocks over here fucking doing some deadlifts. Maybe I'll get him to help me with my workout program. Blah blah blah. Next thing you know, they're banging out in a field somewhere. This is just their whole lives.
They're in that dark tent you're talking about
in Kansas, some damn place.
Right. This is their whole lives, and this is me talking about. This is like incredibly taboo. Like this is stuff that the chain of command everywhere ignores, turns a blind eye, tries to keep it under control, and then there's these things they keep everything under wraps because they don't want everyone to freak out, and it's a mess.
You have a good point there before, because I mean Rollo talks about that, how the women are gatekeepers to intimacy. So that is it's literally illustrated in what you just said. Guys are the gatekeepers to like marriage, and actually making it official. Whereas
the commitment, right?
Yeah, so they go about their life and they choose when and who. Guys don't get that opportunity. I mean, you go to a bar late at night, and if you don't care who you get, you could be pretty successful if you go out any weekend. But typically a guy can't just be like, oh, well, that 8 or 9 is over there and, I'm taking her home tonight. It's not up to you. It's up to, if you present yourself, the way you need to for her specifically. And we know they're all different. So you never know what you're saying. If, you gotta study up. You gotta watch programs like Rollo and Rich and that
She'll
stuff.
make that decision and let
my
you know.
channel and your podcast, right?
Yeah, well, you see,
throw it in there.
So I am a little different than some of the other guys out there.
Oh yeah, no, I can tell it's good. You got a good platform here. I think it'll just take time, to take off. I mean, I'm just now learning like about algorithms and all this crap, like because I'm interested in it now. But
I wanted to ask you something here too. Give me what is the best thing you like about serving and picking this life that you've picked, and what is the thing that you wish you left out? They left out.
It's a good question. As far as serving is concerned, it's just like, you just do what you're good at, sometimes. And it's just, this is something that I happen to be very, very good at, you know. I mean, I've done things that, you know, been in a category of maybe the top 1% of like the militaries in the world and stuff with some of, you know, the groups I've been with. So, I'm still, I feel like small potatoes compared to maybe some of the, you know, Delta Force guys or whatever, or some of these other guys. But you know, there's a lot of guys who've done way more than me for sure. But I've had, you know, an opportunity to chase excellence in this way. And I think as men, we want to make our dent in the world and be valuable. And this is a way for me to do that. I was always good at, you know, we could just say fighting in general, you know, in a sense. And so I could apply that stuff and make an impact and make a difference. And regardless of, you know, political differences and some of the things maybe our government does, it isn't the greatest. When I'm on the ground and affecting lives of people on the ground, you know, one less terrorist is a lot of, you know, women, children, normal people that get to stay alive, you know, in these countries. So it's just that it's a huge sense of when you put somebody down like that, or you make a decision like, you know, pull some intel, grab a target, figuring out where a bunch of bad dudes are at and airstrike them and put them down, or you get a guy thrown out of a high-level government position because he has ties to terrorist organizations. That's a lot of people that aren't going to be dead now because we did that, and that couldn't be more rewarding.
Sure.
To do that, you know. I just have a strong drive to, I don't know, just kind of help people in my tribe and circle and, you know, people around me. And so that's where the coaching comes in. It's not because I'm trying to be like, I don't know, some of these guys, I don't know what their motivations are, but mine is because I've seen so many dudes literally kill themselves over women. It's interesting. Rick Rollo has this story about, I think it was his brother-in-law who killed himself. And, you know, I have that story, maybe not for the guy switching up for a millionaire, but I have that story many times over, year after year. This last year was 4 deaths. The year before that was 8. And I'm talking suicides, drug overdoses.
Wow.
People, not just people like I heard about, people I know directly or served with someone I know directly. Like, this is where there's like I could go to the funeral and it would make sense for me to be there kind of thing. I've had people close to me die drug overdose. Okay, so then you're like, well, he just had a drug problem. But then you dig into it. Yeah, but his wife cheated on him too. And he had been dealing with that. And he had this problem. And he had that problem. And he had been off of, you know, drugs and stuff for a couple of years. Oh, but just all of a sudden decided to bump some heroin that was, you know, laced with fentanyl and killed him. Okay. After his wife cheated on him. Right. For example. Okay. So I'm not saying it's the woman's fault. These guys are killing themselves. Obviously they're self-selecting on their own accord, but certainly the females in their lives didn't help. Exactly. Not only didn't help, but their inability to handle their life with females and their relationships because of the conditioning that they've had since they were kids or raised by that single mom who didn't know any better and just made bad decisions for herself. This is what they're doing. They're ruining their lives, you know, over females because they don't know any better. And they think this is the key to happiness. I'll tell you, even being more of this kind of an alpha type, I handled women very beta until about mid-college, which is a long time ago for me, right? And then I started slaying. Then I got married and then went beta again, even though I'm this dude who like was doing competitive fighting. I was doing, you know, martial arts, the military. Like I had all this alpha stuff, right? I was this Chad. But here I am making really bad decisions with females. And the thing is, my ex-wife is great. She's wonderful. Honestly, she's there's nothing wrong with her. She's great, but she's a woman. And so my handling of her and handling of that situation, and I'm not saying she did everything right. That's not what I mean. But she's not a terrible person. It's just that the relationship dynamic was doomed from the beginning, because if you approach your interactions and relationships with women in what we call a blue pilled fashion, the way that society has conditioned you, you know, with that social conditioning, that self-sacrificing, you know, I'm putting my family first instead of your purpose and life first. You know, things that sound good, you know, sound biblical almost, even though they're actually not when you go look into it. You're doomed for failure. This chick could be the greatest woman on earth or whatever, right? But pretend she exists somewhere. And you approach her with your social conditioning that is mainstream. She will become dissatisfied and unhappy over time. The sex will go down. She will become the nagging, bitching wife, and you'll be wondering what the hell happened, you know? And so that's what drove me towards helping dudes out. And the more time and energy I can dedicate to that, you know, the better. So my future plans is to get that out, hopefully published by August. I want my course on, you know, pickup and game, maybe around November. And I want to be able to pick up enough coaching clients to sustain that, those activities in between stuff when I get back. I'll be back right around June. So my goal right now is to actually hit 1,000 subscribers by June, you know, and just makes you more searchable and all that. And I need to brand myself. I'm talking to a couple of high level people. Again, I keep plugging the 1% group, because if you want to up your life up, it's a low cost of entry to get a lot of value back. So I got some gentlemen that are helping me with my branding in there. And so hopefully we'll have, you know, branding's easy. I'm not going to be anybody different. I'm just going to be myself, but I need to target, you know, who's going to want to actually work with me to the right people. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And so there's certain people that are not going to want to work with me. There's certain people that are, and I need to make sure I get in front of those people and keep putting out content that helps people through the YouTube channel. That's all for free, right? And that's how we give back, you know, and help dudes just at a low cost, other than our time. But, you know, that's pretty much where I'm at right now. I'd like to maintain a roster of, you know, maybe if I could do 15, 20 coaching hours. 15 is my minimal goal. Sometime by fall, if I could get to that. I am, you know, civilian side. I have a real estate license and do transactional real estate, but I want to make this more of I would rather have this be my primary income and passion, you know, because too many guys need help. Too many guys are screwing their lives up and they don't even see it.
Paul, I just want to say, again, I know, geez, you're working now on like 3 hours sleep. I want to say thank you. Thank you for taking time out of all your busy stuff over there to come on, to talk to us, to give us, you know, some really good insight. That was great.
Awesome.
And I just wish you all the best. I want you to be safe. I want everybody over there to be safe. I want you to get back here so that you can start working on that book. So, you know, you definitely make me a bro promise to get the heck over here safe.
Get back safely.
And work on that. All right?
Absolutely. I appreciate the chance to get on your show and to be able to talk through some of the stuff. Hopefully your listeners will enjoy it.